This is the explanation behind the events leading up to the Texas Revolution. The major key concepts to understand are what events caused the Texas Revolution, who was involved, and why did Texas revolt against the Mexican government. So first off, it's important to understand the countries that owned Texas before Mexico. So starting with France, which owned Texas in the beginning of the 17th century, until it was later bought out by Spain in the 18th century. And then later on, the United States would take control of Texas from Spain until Mexico would eventually take control of Texas from the United States. Once Mexico took Texas into their custody, problems began to occur between the United States and Mexico. And this centered around the issue of filibusters, which would lead into the Constitution of 1824. Filibusters are individuals from the U.S. who invaded other countries' property and took it for themselves. So these filibusters would go into Mexico and claim Mexican property for themselves. This made Mexico very angry and caused the country to start having disputes between the United States due to territorial boundaries. How does this relate to the start of the revolution? Mexico convinced these filibusters to join them in revolting against Spain because at the time, Spain and Mexico were at war with one another, and they would claim Texas for themselves. This led to the creation of the Constitution of 1824, formally recognizing Texas as a part of Mexico. Mexico was able to persuade these filibusters by appointing them as impresarios, which would lead into the General Colonization Law of 1824. This was a movement that turned filibusters into Mexican citizens by recruiting them to sell Texan land to immigrants at low prices. They would earn their citizenship by learning Spanish and converting to Catholicism. Now, this increased the population of Texas exponentially. It nearly doubled. However, the impresarios began to dislike being under the Mexican rule and desired their own freedom. On the right, you will see four historical figures: Jim Bowie, Sam Houston, William B. Travis, and Davy Crockett. These men were all former filibusters who converted into impresarios. So problems began to rise between impresarios and the Mexican government, along with individuals like American immigrants who had come to live in Mexico but were beginning to desire their own freedom. Hayden Edwards was the first impresario to claim his own independent settlement apart from the Mexican government. And this started Edwards' Rebellion, which is when Hayden Edwards, leading a small mob of rebels, fought against the Mexican government for their freedom. However, they were quickly shut down because they were severely outnumbered, and Hayden Edwards was immediately thrown into jail afterwards. However, this movement encouraged impresarios and other American immigrants to seek out independence from Mexico. Mexico had had enough of the impresarios and other Texan immigrants revolting against the government, so they established the laws of April 6 in 1830. These laws banned further American immigration and raised import tariffs. However, this only caused the impresarios and other Texan immigrants to become even angrier, and they continued to revolt against the government. Not long after the laws of April 6 were created, Santa Anna became the president over Mexico. Santa Anna was a total dictator, and he shut down any revolt that anyone would try to start against the Mexican government. One of these revolts was led by William B. Travis, who was captured and thrown into jail. The rest of the rebels that fought alongside him were able to escape. Once they were safe from Mexican troops, they wrote down the Turtle Bayou Resolutions. These resolutions explained why Texas needed to separate itself from the Mexican government and become an independent country. They also accused Santa Anna for his tyranny over the people of Mexico. Stephen F. Austin was the man chosen from this group to present these Turtle Bayou resolutions to Santa Anna. However, Santa Anna became furious and threw Stephen F. Austin in jail. These resolutions were important because they became the foundation for the Texas Revolution.